We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vallotton. All right, well, this week I get to spend some time with you again, Al.
Yes.
And man, I'm excited.
Oh, I'm so excited. It's always so fun.
For those who don't know, you are my daughter-in-law.
That's correct. I know, it's a shocker every time.
Yeah. And I had kids so young that it's been a little awkward for you and I, for you to call me dad. So
yes, we're working on it.
What do you refer to me as?
I refer to you in conversation as dad for sure. That's grown. Yeah.
Yeah, but not like, hey, to my
Dad.
face. Yeah.
It's a little funny.
Yeah. So I'm Big J for
now.
Yeah,
we'll
for
see
now.
how that goes.
Maybe when I'm like 70,
I think when you like start to get some gray, maybe then we'll change.
But what's so fun is we get to do life together, and we love to do a lot of the same things.
Yes.
And so podcasting is one of those, and talking about emotional health and talking about relationships and how to do life well. And so if you guys missed, I don't even know what podcast number they were, but anyways, if they missed the last podcast that you and I did about dating and relationships, they should go back.
They
just push pause on this right now, run back
Rewind.
there and listen to it. But we wanted to continue down this road and talk about some conflict resolution stuff, because it's really interesting. And I'll jump off this bandwagon shortly, but it's interesting that we go through life and rarely does anyone ever sit you down and go, let me give you a plan for conflict.
Yeah.
Let me teach you how to, and just small things like, let me teach you how to process pain, because you're going to be in pain at some point.
Right.
Let me teach you how to communicate your emotions, because that's going to happen.
Yep.
Let me teach you how to process what you're going through. Let me teach you how to, we learn all these things that we think are essential in life. For instance, we do physical education at school. Right. We do history. We do science and all those things are.
Right. But
if you can't do life with other human beings and be effective, right? Do it in an effective way, then man, it just makes living so hard.
Challenging.
Yeah.
Makes life really hard.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so I think you have some awesome questions we're going to dialogue through.
Yes.
And so, gosh, I'm excited.
Are you ready to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we're going to just jump into questions then. First question I have for you today says, my teenage daughter and I haven't been getting along lately. It seems like every conversation we have turns into an argument, and I don't know what to do. Where do I go from here?
Yeah, well, for starters.
Been there. Yeah, totally.
I have been there. Yeah, I've been there and we'll be there again. Right? That's the thing about life is you only get to control you. So you don't get to control whether or not your kids want to talk, like to talk. But the important thing in a relationship is to make sure that you're connected. That's a good point. When kids go through those teenage years, my oldest son, Elijah, who you're married to, is 23.
Yeah.
Then Riley, my daughter, is 20, I think.
Yeah, turning 21.
Yeah, she's turning 21 soon. And then Evan's 18. And then I have the 2-year-old Edie, and then my 7-month-old Liam. And so there's so many different stages that we go through in life. And I can remember when Lige and when Riley and when Evan were in those early teenage years, they're feeling so many things. There's so much pressure from school. There's so much pressure from our world. There's so much pressure just from their inner world that it's very hard for them to process through. Am I pissed off at you? Or am I
can't figure it out myself.
Bad hair day, like literally could throw my daughter off.
Yes.
My son could just feel frustrated because of sports or school and all of a sudden he's directing that towards me.
Totally.
So what I think is the best in these scenarios is to stop and go, are we connected? Because if you just go, I want you to respect me, or you're disrespecting me. You need to stop that. Or, I'm the adult here and you're the child. Like you better step back. All those power plays end up just hurting you in the long run.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
And so rather you can stop and ask the question, are we connected?
Yeah.
Do they know that they're cared for, loved? Do they know that I care more about our relationship than I do about being right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have an active connection, this is for your wife too, or your husband.
Yeah,
like
totally.
Rather than trying to solve the financial issue, rather than trying to solve the issue with your kids, rather than trying to, what are we going to eat tonight? If you aren't connected, every conversation that you have from there on,
just painful.
Yeah. Because when you're disconnected, you assume the worst about each other.
Yeah.
Right? Totally. Like think about when you're disconnected from life.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah. It's really hard
rough
to have conversation.
It is. And so we make people that we're not connected with, we make our enemy and we self-protect against them. So with your kids, especially, sometimes it's cool to stop and put this issue that you want to solve, like just put it back here on the shelf and then go work on your connection.
Yeah.
So that could be like go to a movie, take them to dinner, hang out, have fun. And then when you're connected, you can bring up that other thing like, hey, I know that this thing's been coming up a lot with you. Let's talk about it.
Right.
Or, hey, I felt disrespected the other day. I know that's probably wasn't what you were trying to do. How are you doing?
It's a good, really good advice. I could imagine as a parent that could feel, I'm just thinking if this is like a behavioral issue, it's something where you're like, my kid has really acted out. They need some discipline. Are you saying to just pause that, come back to it later? And potentially this teenager thinks, oh, great. I was able to get away with that. I'm going to strike again.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about a culture, right? So I want to make sure that my children know that I care for them. I love them. I'm connected to them. And from a place of connection, then I can return back to that conversation. Yeah. So if you just go straight for the discipline, who cares if you discipline your kids if they don't feel cared for?
It's true.
And who cares if because we always can, right? We can go like, oh, you just lost all of the privileges in your whole entire life. Totally. You don't have a life anymore.
Right.
And John Maxwell says there's different levels of leadership. And the first level is positional. Right? Like Tim, who does our podcast, he will do what I ask him to do because I'm his boss.
Right.
I'm paying the bills.
Right.
So Tim's going to go, all right, yes. That's one level. And that's not a bad level. That's just a starting point.
Right. Right.
But what I want to get into is that next level, which is permissional. Right? Where if I see Tim at the grocery store and he's not on the clock, he wants my input. He wants me around. He wants my advice. Like he wants me as a leader in his life because he believes that I believe in him. Yeah. I'm an asset. I'm a benefit to his life. And so, with our kids, a lot of times we have, we rely so much on that positional authority. Totally. Because I said so. Yep. Because that's what God said. Because it's a sin. Instead of from this place of permissional. Which isn't, I'm trying to be your best friend. Right. Because I'm not trying to be my kid's best friend. Yeah. But I don't have to cave my morals and values in order to connect.
Yeah, that's really good. And to feel cared for. I think about the moments, obviously I don't have kids, so I'm like thinking about my own personal journey with my parents and being disciplined. And I think about the moments that I look back and I go, wow, my heart really shifted in that moment. I was really impacted by the way they handled that moment. It was moments that they came in and they sought to my heart. They weren't just figuring out my behavior. It was like, what's going on with you? What's happening with you? Yeah. Where I feel way more connected. And then later, obviously we can dialogue about what choices I'm making in my life. Yeah. But it's that heart connection because you feel cared for. You're way more willing to let people speak into your life if you feel cared for.
I remember when the kids were young And we had, of course, gone through the divorce and all that hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was like just having so much struggle with the kids, you know, whether it was acting out or there's just a lot of pain, right?
Yeah.
And I called Danny one time, Danny Silk, and I was just wanting to get some advice on like, Elijah's doing this thing or Riley's doing this thing, and like I'm trying to correct them. And he said, hey, I don't know that they can hear you in the heat of the battle.
Yeah. Wow.
Like I'm sitting them down trying to like lecture them, you know, and they're just like, they're so emotional. They're in so much pain. Like they can't hear what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And
so I remember having to go through like, okay, to assess, can they even hear me right now?
Yeah.
Like when my daughter Edie is having a meltdown and I'm trying to lecture her about her meltdown, like she can't hear me.
No.
And so again, like there's so much pressure for us to like, I will be respected or I will get this message to you instead of taking a step back and going, well, what's the most effective thing to do right now?
Yeah, totally.
De-escalate, reconnect, and then deliver the message in a way that feels loving and caring.
Totally. Which can be so hard. Now I'm totally shifting it a little bit, but I'm thinking about specifically in marriage. Like I think about just a bit ago, I was out of town and there was a conflict that occurred between Elijah and I.
Over the phone. Yeah.
Which is so challenging. We know that's really hard.
Whose fault was it? That's all we care about.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. But I remember like just feeling so frustrated and communicating. Like I'm leaving this conversation so mad. Okay, now you're calling me back. Now I'm on the phone with you again. So mad, so frustrated, not feeling heard. You're not feeling heard. And eventually I just felt like I had to be Holy Spirit because I was like going to, debate my case for the whole night. And I felt the Holy Spirit say, Elijah doesn't need to hear you in your case right now. He needs to feel like you're trying to seek to understand him. And so I just had to stop, which is really hard. And I had to just humble myself and be like, oh my gosh, Elijah actually has had a whirlwind of a weekend and he just needs me to try to seek to understand. And I remember later on, obviously I came home a couple days later and began to be able to tell him how that really made me feel again. And it was interesting because even the moment he said, well, it just makes me feel like you're not hearing me. And I said, that's exactly how I felt. But you just needed to know that I was trying to understand, right?
Yeah.
I just need you to know that, I just need to know that you're trying to understand.
Yeah.
It's just like all that high emotion and chaos of the moment can be so settled when you just like, I'm just seeking to understand.
It's massive.
Humbling, very humbling.
It's massive because in any conversation that we have, there has to be a talker and there has to be a listener. There can't be a talker and then somebody doing rebuttals in their mind.
Yeah. Oh.
And if you have a relationship where you aren't seeking to understand, then the whole relationship is based upon self-protection. And it never works.
It's not fun.
It's impossible to make that work because there's no way that I can protect me from you
and still let you in
and be close and find a win-win and all that. So we should also at some point, just so we don't forget, we should talk about the rules of conflict.
Okay.
So we don't have to do it right now.
We'll pin that.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah, let's
really took that one for a while. Okay. Is addressing conflict always worth it? Is it better sometimes to just let some things go or to just avoid a problem?
Yeah.
It's a big question.
It is a big question. And the problem with problems is that when you avoid problems, typically we don't let them go. So we typically keep them in our little tally box that we have back here. And I know that you've probably got one too. I've got one. And when you don't address things that really hurt you, and we can classify that. If you can really let something go genuinely, because on the other hand, we do that all the time. So on one hand, we're going like, yeah, this doesn't really matter. You've heard the expression like, pick another hill to die on. Like you have to really choose the hill that you want to die on.
Right.
And as parents, so if you talk about that aspect, you can't correct your kids all day long.
Yeah.
And you could if you wanted to.
Right.
Because kids are in a learning phase and you're a coach.
Right.
So you could be like, oh, hey, you came out and your attitude was a little poor today. Hey, you got a couple things on your floor. Hey, I didn't feel cared for when I walked in. Hey, you didn't look your mom in the, right. Like you could constantly be like, and that's the best way to work your way out of their life. The flip side to that is if you are avoiding conflict in a relationship, then, conflict is not a place of war. It's not even a place of combat. It just means that what you have in your mind and what I have in my mind are two different things. We have to sort this out.
Yeah.
And if we don't sort this out, we ultimately, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of resentment in that.
Yep. I think too, people just have a lot of fear over conflict. And I'm like, I think about all the times I avoided conflict for years of my life. It's because I never saw it be done well.
Yeah.
Right. So there's just so much fear. Like, how do I even confront this? Might as well just avoid it forever.
Yeah. So those are good standards, right? Like when I'm talking about my kids, when I'm thinking about my kids, I love them. And so I am sorting through what's important for me to confront and what actually doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not going to confront my son every day on his bedroom.
Yeah.
But we are going to talk about it every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And, and we're going to have some standards, and I'm not going to talk to him every day about his attitude. He's 18 or he's 16 or they're 14 and they're working through, it's like you can't hound them every day. But we're going to remind them what's important and why it's important from a place of connection. So with my spouse, it's a bit of a different game too. So sometimes I'll tell Lauren like, hey, find a different hill to fight on. It's just petty stuff that kind of annoys her. She's like, hey, can you not do this or not do that? And I'm like, babe, like we've been married for over 10 years. You've been with me for, 13 years. I've done this forever. You probably need to pick something else. I'm just going to keep, this is my life
right.
Like, I really can't. I really can't change this. But then there are those things that hurt, and those are different.
Yeah.
If she's hurting or if I'm in a place that hurts, you cannot avoid that. You can't avoid that. And that has to be something that you do confront, and you do it from a place of compassion and talking about yourself and tackling it head on, because without boundaries and without needs, there's no way to feel cared for and loved in a relationship. And so being able to have real needs, which means I'm hurting or I need something, being able to present that and then that need being met, man, there's nothing better than being in a conflict and your partner hearing you and going, oh, yeah, I want to meet that need. Like, I hear you.
Yeah.
It brings so much connection.
Yeah. I'm having a thought about those, those relationships though, where this isn't a family member. So not your kids, not your spouse, just this person where you've had to do life with them for whatever reason. And you've come around to the same issue over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And comes the question, like, how much more do I confront this problem with this person, or do I just let this relationship go?
Yeah.
Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's great. Does the person have the capacity to do what I need in order for this relationship to be healthy? And, I think that if you have somebody in your life that you're having to constantly talk about the same thing over and over and over again, and you need to reevaluate at what place you're giving them in your life.
Yeah.
Because if you want somebody to do something that they really can't do and it's painful for you, you probably need to move them to a different spot.
Yeah, totally.
They just can't do it, or you're not communicating it effectively. And so, unmet expectations lead to pain.
Yeah.
And if you have an expectation for somebody and they just can't change, or they can't move, or they're unwilling to move, put them in a different spot.
Yeah, totally. Good point. Okay, next question. You ready for it?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. Whenever I talk through conflict in a relationship, I end up just getting really angry and have a hard time communicating. What would your advice be?
Is this yours?
Yeah, this is me. I just get so mad.
For starters, I would say, wow, that's really common.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you're in a conflict, you're starting off from a place of feeling really hurt, usually.
Yeah.
Or disrespected or whatever, which is all around that, like hurt. I feel hurt. Yeah. And so taking a step back and asking yourself, what are you trying to communicate? How do you want this to end? Mm-hmm. And if you can start with the end in mind, then the chances are you'll do a much better job of communicating where you're at and what's really going on.
Yeah.
So what that looks like is, let's say that I felt really disrespected from you, whether on purpose or not. And I walked away feeling like, oh my gosh, she didn't care for me. She did it on purpose. If I'm going to start this conversation with you, I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling nervous. I'm afraid that you're going to reject me.
Right.
I feel a little bit, I feel dishonored. So I'm going to start by going, Al, I want to feel close to you. I want you to feel respected.
That's really
and I want to feel respected.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure why or what happened the other day, but here's how it felt to me.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping judgment out of it.
Yep.
I'm talking about me. I'm starting soft. So psychologists say that how you start a conversation will decide how it ends with 80% accuracy.
Wow.
And so a lot of people are like, I don't know how to do conflict. And I always say, just start how you want it to end.
That's so good.
And if you start how you want it to end, you don't have to be a pro.
Right.
You can literally write down your opening sentence.
Wow.
Like, I want to
This
feel.
is what I want.
Yeah, I want to feel really connected to you.
Even thinking about the tone.
Yeah, I'm slowing everything down.
Oh yeah. When the emotions are high, but the tone comes down and it's like really soft and just gentle, it makes me want to be able to solve the conflict too.
Yeah, because you're at a spot where you can hear.
Yeah.
Can you hear when I'm punching you in the nose with my accusations?
Oh no, you're just like defense mode.
Yeah. So again, I know that some of this is like Olympic level stuff, but you have to start somewhere, right?
No,
like you have to start with going, I'm going to talk about me. I'm going to start with the end in mind, and I'm going to open up and tell you without any judgment where I'm at.
It's really good.
Yeah. And so usually if she does that, right? If she starts from that point and shares her heart with her husband from that point, she'll see just a massive turnaround because he doesn't feel attacked. None of us do good when we feel attacked.
Oh no.
None of us.
You probably will speak into this because you're talking about ground rules for conflict. But I was thinking about when Elijah and I first got married and how conflict would often become very accusational. Like, you are this, you always that, you never this. And like, we've been through BSSM, we've been through school. We know that's not the way to fight. And I remember having to have a conversation where we literally laid ground rules of like, this, we don't do conflict like this. We can't make statements like this. And so after that conversation, when conflict would happen and those statements would be made, it was like, oh, pause, time out, like red flag, you can't do that. And kind of take a moment. And like, if you need to resume this conversation when you cannot make those comments, great, we can do it. But there's fair playing field when you have conflict like that.
Yeah, you have to fight fair.
Yes.
And part of fighting fair is not calling names and not using your pain to cause somebody else pain and all that stuff.
But talking about, like you're saying, talking about your own feelings, how you felt, it changes the name of the game. It
really does. So however you grew up, that's what you're going to resort back to when you get afraid, when your adrenaline spikes. So, that's all of us are doing is you're going to run away, or you're going to fight, or you're going to fawn. And so you just have to, that's why you practice this stuff and write it out and work on it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to jump to this question because you just made a comment referring to this. But
Let's
can you describe flight, freeze, and fawn in conflict? How do you know which one you are?
Yeah, probably all of them, depending upon where you're at, right? Like
that's true. Huh?
So, and who's in front of you? And I wouldn't say like, oh, those are all horrible things. Those are just protection mechanisms. So if somebody comes into my home, I hope that I'm in fight mode.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and if they're trying to hurt my family, I hope that I'm in fight mode. And so in a relational context, that looks like Lauren starts out saying, hey, last night I felt so sad. I went to bed really sad and I wanted to, share my heart with you, but I didn't feel like you were listening. And I'd say, oh, I was listening. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You always, right? I'm fighting.
Totally.
There's the accusations. I'm not actually hearing her. The flight would be, it could look a lot like me just stonewalling and being absent.
And flight and fawn, are they the same thing?
Flight's not necessarily the same. Fawn could be I just sit there and take it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, like I'm just paralyzed. I don't have any needs. Or even like I could agree and I'm just going to take it. So yeah, I think in a conflict, oftentimes in my past, I had such a hard time sharing where I was at. So I just wanted the conflict to be over.
Oh, yeah.
So if she or he was going, hey, I was really angry at you last night. Like, I'm sorry. I'm just like, I'm sorry, but what happens is you get resentful. You get more and more and more resentful because your needs aren't being taken care of. Yep. And you're constantly building this case about the other person, the person that you're supposed to love the most.
Right.
But it's because I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid that you won't handle my emotions well. I'm afraid that you won't show up for me. So stonewalling is different though. Like to me, like fawn, when I picture fawn, I just picture like what I just did there. Like, I'm not going to have any needs. I don't want to disrupt you.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. But to me, the flight or stonewalling, stonewalling is a term that often guys do. And it's not that a woman never does it, right? But more often a man would do. And John Gottman's the one, I believe that the Gottman Institute's the one that coined this phrase. Oh. And so the 7 principles for making marriage work is where you can find this information. But stonewalling is where I have made up my mind. I am not giving you a piece of me.
Yeah.
Like 0. You can yell all you want. It's like a FU.
Right.
But
it just gets the person more frustrated. Hurt me. Yeah.
Gets person way more frustrated. Yeah. So can't hurt me. Can't access me. Don't know what you're going to do type of deal.
Yeah. Tricky.
Yeah. And that's so the Gottman Institute has predictions for like they can predict if marriage is going to succeed or fail.
About this study that they did
with like 90% accuracy.
Yeah. With how they argue. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not if they argue.
It's how. Yeah.
Yeah. And so stonewalling is one of those.
Yes.
One of the 4 horsemen.
Contentment, I think is what they called it. Right. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Next question.
Hey, BraveCo men. I am here to tell you about our BraveCo testimony book, the Father's Edition. This is chock full of incredible testimonies of God coming through for men, for marriages, for finances. And here's why it's important. In Revelations, it says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And that is what happens when you get other people's testimonies as you get their breakthrough. And so I want you to check out this book. If you want something that you can give to your son, you can give to your father, you can give to a friend that will really help them out in life, this book is it. You can go to braveco.org and pick up your copy today.
When I speak with my parents, it feels like they run right over my boundaries and treat me like I'm still a child. It's upsetting, and I don't know how to address this with them. What should I do?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it depends on how old you are.
Are you still a child?
yeah, totally.
Are you acting like one?
I have kids ask me that kind of stuff, and it's challenging, like a 12-year-old saying, what do I do? My dad doesn't respect me or listen to me. That can be really hard.
Yeah.
It can be really hard. But let's say that you're 18 and out of the home.
Yeah, a little different.
It really is, because it's no longer your parents. You always need to honor and love your parents like you need to honor and love people.
Right.
But you don't owe them a place in your life just because they're your parents.
Mm.
And
that's a hard one to swallow.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you give your parents a place, regardless of what they do, just because they're your parents, it just leads to a lot of resentment and a lot of pain. It doesn't mean that we don't work harder to build a healthy relationship with the people that are blood.
Right.
Because I think that we do, and I think that we should. But you have to be able to communicate to them in a way that, like we talked about earlier, like, hey, Dad, I want to have a healthy relationship with you. I really care about having you in my life. Mm-hmm. The other night, this happened, and I'm feeling like it's a cycle, and I've communicated before, and I'm communicating it again. I love you, but I can't do this.
Right.
I can't do this.
Right.
And they're either going to go, oh, wow, I hear you.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. I'm trying to change.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like, we're all trying to change.
Right.
Like, no problem. Or they're going to go like, I don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then you have to make some decisions, right? Like, can you have them this close while they still do this thing?
Yeah.
Is that healthy for your relationship?
Right.
Like, maybe not. Mm-hmm. So maybe I don't go over mom and dad's house every day.
Right.
Maybe I go over there every week because I can do that, and it's helpful and healthy.
Right.
And so, we see it all the time, right? Like, I know some of my friends, they'll be, have a sibling that's a best friend, but I don't know any siblings that are all best friends. Like, we grew up together, we're family, like we all still share everything all the time. Like, right. And that's because we have preferences in our life. Mm-hmm. Each sibling and our parents have preferences in our life, and they have stuff that we all have different needs. And it's like, well,
right.
I like this thing, or I don't like this thing, or it feeds me, or it doesn't feed me. I have this interest. I don't have this interest. And therefore you work, or you don't work on this level.
Right. Sometimes too, I think that obviously that relationship shifts and changes, right? As you go from child to adult. And I feel like what I saw in my own life and just my friends' lives, there's an easy ability to just slip into, oh my gosh, my parents, they don't respect my boundaries, when in fact, like, they've never had a child grow up either. And there needs to be grace to figure out the new dynamic with you being an adult and them also being an adult. That's a really tricky transition. And I would find even now, sometimes I have to check myself where in my relationship with my parents, I'm like, am I acting like a child? Because sometimes it's really easy to revert back to what you knew your relationship to be like with them, where it's like 13-year-old Allie all of a sudden is coming out. And I'm like, Lord have mercy, that's really embarrassing. Like, I don't talk like that anymore. What just happened? But being able to own your case as an adult, bring it back to them and apologize for whatever that scenario was.
It's true.
It's just learning.
There's so much pain inside of, child-parent relationships and so much unresolved pain that you really have to make sure that as you grow up that you're not carrying around unresolved pain because that shadows and shapes, your relationship with your parents. And they may not even be aware of the pain or that they cause you or that you cause them. It's going to go vice versa, or the reality that you're walking around with. And I, counseling, I've just seen that for so long. The parents are like, that's not actually what happened. But the child is like, oh, that's what I grew up with. And the worlds are so different. And they're both right. Like,
That was your experience,
Yeah.
your perception of the situation.
Yeah. And so I think, moving forward into your adult years, you have to go, hey, have I actually communicated to my parents where I'm at?
Yeah.
And how I feel and what I want for our relationship. And so.
Right. It's a little bit of growing up on your part yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really good. Okay. My friend has recently been making really bad decisions. Every time I talk to him, it's like talking to a wall. Oh. They get really defensive. Our relationship is falling apart. What is my role? Should I help them?
Yeah. I think that's, you can't help anybody that doesn't want help. Mm-hmm. And if you help somebody that doesn't want help, now you're becoming a violator. You're becoming controlling.
Yeah.
And I see that happen a lot with parents. They're, especially when the kids get older, they're trying to help their kids who aren't wanting help.
Yeah.
And it just leads to a lot of resentment, a lot of bitterness, a lot of pain. And so at the same time, like there is real accountability and confrontation that we're supposed to have that's healthy. If I see you doing something that I feel like is clearly off,
right,
I'm going to come to you and say, hey, I really care about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel nervous about what's happening. Can you help me understand?
Yeah.
It's 99% of the time, it's the way we are communicating to people. Mm-hmm. And I just can't stress that enough. I often think that, and I'll finish the answer to this question, but mm-hmm. I often think relationships blow up because people don't understand how to confront or how to care or how to love. And so I let my fear be the thing that's talking instead of my compassion be the thing that's talking. I let my pain be the thing that's talking instead of my compassion be the thing that's talking. And so, and then we put this thing on like, well, I'm just telling the truth. Yeah, but you're a butthole, like you have a jerk about it. Yeah, you can't just say, well, I'm just telling you the truth. And because I'm telling you the truth, it justifies how I tell the truth.
Yeah.
So, our standard for conflict and communication it's the kindness of God that leads us to repentance.
Right.
That's our standard.
Yeah.
Oof. So when God looks at me and he sees me doing something wrong, mm-hmm. he comes in a kind way mm-hmm. and addresses that.
Right.
And I go, oh, you're so awesome. Mm-hmm. He's not smashing me.
Totally.
So if you have a friend that doesn't want your input, doesn't want your feedback, is defensive, like I don't know what kind of friend that is. I mean, they're putting themselves into a different category,
right?
Which is okay.
Yeah, you don't have a voice in their life.
Yeah, let them live there.
Yeah,
and do stuff with them that you don't have to confront.
Yeah,
I don't.
Which might be painful, though. If your relationship has been close before.
You can write a letter to them too. That's another really good way for someone to hear.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to hear sometimes when you're standing in front of them. So it's like, hey, I wrote you a letter. I just want you to read it and think about it. And then respond in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Like, I care for you.
Yeah.
That's a cool way to go. Because someone, when we lay in bed at night, we turn off the lights. That's a pretty confronting moment for us.
Yeah. We're alone with our thoughts.
Yeah. And that's where a letter is really good.
That's really good advice. Okay. Next question. We're coming down to the last few.
Thank God.
So I know we've just been throwing them out to you. My young kids really know how to push my buttons. Oh. How do I resolve conflict with them even though they can barely communicate? We're talking toddlers.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, there's a toddler life it's a whole entire world, right? It's a whole entire culture. And
it's a whole culture.
It is. It's a structure. And,
right.
And kids, I think that you have to remember and have to have very clear understanding of your role and their capacity. Mm-hmm. Your kids come out not knowing anything. Yeah. So everything that they're learning for the first, 6 years of their life, pretty much, is you.
Right.
And your little tiny environment.
Right.
And then you also have to understand your kids don't know how to express their needs, their frustrations, their desires. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to manage their emotions. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. So who's supposed to teach them that?
Right.
You are.
Right.
Well, how do you know when they need to learn that stuff? Well, because they express it. Mm-hmm. So if you don't understand that role, you're like, stop yelling, quit hitting your brother. Don't talk to me that way. Mm-hmm. You're like offended.
Right.
I'm offended that you 2-year-old
don't know how to talk,
are rude,
right,
inconsiderate, selfish. Mm-hmm. So you also have to remember, developmentally, a baby only has the capacity to think about himself.
Right.
Like developmentally, they don't have, your child doesn't come out, start crying, see that it's affecting you negatively, and then stop.
Right.
And go,
oh no, I better be quiet. Right.
They don't. It's survival, right? Yeah. So as we grow older, our brain develops and we start to think about others.
Right.
We go, sharing really is important. Considering how I'm affecting you is really important. They have to learn that.
Right.
They don't have that capacity.
Right.
So if you go into parenting not remembering that, not taking that into effect, you're just pissed off all the time.
Right.
So you're coming in there as a coach. You're coming in there as an instructor. You're coming in there as a teacher. Mm-hmm. And you're coming in there like, this is a privilege.
Yeah.
I get to take a human who has no understanding of how this should work, and I get to navigate them through the ups and the downs of their emotions, through the ups and downs of their frustrations, through the ups and the downs of their desires.
Yeah.
And they're going to have all the gamut. Mm-hmm. And so I need to make sure on my end that I'm setting myself up for success.
Yeah.
So getting enough free time, waking up early enough so that I can, do my
moment to yourself,
morning devotionals, not staying up so late that I'm tired. Like your coach.
Yeah.
They didn't ask to be brought into this world.
Wow.
You brought them into the world.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's a heavy responsibility on the privilege of raising kids.
It's really good.
Yeah. And so, the other thing I'd say is you got to read books, you got to read books, and you got to find the experts out there like Danny Silk. He's got some incredible stuff on parenting. That's where I learned. Go to parenting classes and courses. Like what tools do you have in your toolbox? So that's my rebuttal to them is like, how many tools do you have in your toolbox for parenting? If you just learned what your parents did,
right,
you're going to be frustrated.
Totally.
Because they probably didn't teach you much. They probably did a lot.
Right.
But they probably didn't teach you how to manage your emotions.
How to parent. You were just being parented. Yeah.
So often, it's so much more telling about the parent than it is the child.
Wow.
Right. A child's, my kids are pushing my buttons. They're your buttons. They're not theirs. And I have them too. I'm not saying, but like you should be, a 2-year-old should be able to push my buttons. And I'd be like, oh, cool. You're 2.
You can manage it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You're 2. Right. Just like my 2-year-old should be able to hit me. And I'd be like, you're 2.
Right.
I don't feel like hitting you back or, or I'm not hitting you back. And so we all get to those moments as parents where we're at the end of our rope.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And you're thinking crazy thoughts and you realize like, oh, I just have to set my child down right now and let them cry and go walk outside and take a break. It's not going to hurt them.
Yeah.
And so, you got to learn, you probably got to get some more tools and learn how to manage your emotions.
Yeah. Really good. Really good. Okay. Last question for the day. This person's asked, I grew up seeing my parents fight all the time. I didn't want to bring that same thing into my marriage, but I'm watching myself do the same thing with my wife.
No.
How do I break this cycle?
It's awesome.
Are you shocked by that question?
No, it's great. Yeah, we do. We bring in the culture that we grew up in. That's all we know. It's all we've been trained in. We just talked about training your kids. And unless you were trained in something else, and unless you created a different culture inside of you, that's what you're going to produce. No biggie, no problem. You just have to start going, well, what do I want to produce?
Have vision. Yeah.
And then get really disciplined in it. So to me, the easiest way to learn this stuff is to teach it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for reals. It's how I became so good at it, right? Is when you have to teach this stuff, you don't know something until you can teach it. Like, I don't have notes here. You didn't ask me one question ahead of time, right?
No. Yeah. You didn't know what questions
I didn't
were
make
coming.
up these questions.
Right.
So this is all stuff that I have had to learn over the years because I've put myself in a position where I want to teach this stuff. And so because I want to teach it, I have to study it. And then because I want to teach it, I can't be a hypocrite at home. So I have to live by it. And so I would say for people, like, when you're trying to change the culture inside of you, you could do it on your own or you could do it together. It's so much better to do it together.
Yeah.
So find a group, find another married couple that wants to change the way that you communicate and go through, Danny Silk's communication stuff.
Yeah.
He's got the communication dance. He has like a whole courses and courses on marriage and communication and health and spend 100 hours in there.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh.
You'll learn a few things.
That's true, right?
Yeah.
Because if you spend 100 hours in there, you're like, oh yeah, spend the first 10 hours doing it with your wife and learning it. And then spend the next 90 hours, you guys teaching it in a small group setting. Invite people over that, that, hey, let's go through 3 months of whatever, 12 weeks.
Yeah.
You watch it, teach the class. So that's ultimately, to me, like, it's not just learning what to say. It's also learning how to unpack those years of, because what's really happening in you when you're arguing? You're afraid, you have pain. Rarely are we arguing about what happened today.
Right.
We are often arguing about what happened
years ago.
When you weren't even present.
Right.
How many arguments with you and Lige, the root of it isn't actually what you did or what he did. The root of it goes back to his childhood or your childhood. Oh yeah,
totally.
So much of it. I was feeling abandoned. I wasn't feeling cared for. I wasn't feeling heard. And so, they're just triggers to what I dealt with. So that's the other side to it. If you're stuck in a cyclical pattern, you just have to own that. And I would start by telling my wife, like, I know this isn't you. Or it's not only you.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Now you just made yourself
now I just owned it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And extreme ownership is the way forward in this stuff, because now you can go get counseling for that piece.
Yeah.
You can become a learner for that piece, but you can't hope and pray and live normal life and just think that it's going to go away.
Totally. Takes work. You made this comment before where you say you're not responsible for what happened to you, but you're responsible for your situation now. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah.
That's reminding me of this very thing. Like, your past, of course you couldn't control the things that happened to you, but you're responsible for it. You're responsible for making those changes now.
It's so true.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. And we're all in the same boat, right? Like, everybody wants something to be different about their life.
Totally.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have more money. We want to have better friendships. We want to be talked to better. We want to talk to people better. We want to raise better kids. We want to feel more connected. I want a cleaner garage and a cleaner house. And
right.
Then I can look at my calendar. I can look at my finances. I can look at my effort and tell you what I'm going to have in my life.
Yeah, you make a plan for it. Yeah.
If it's not on my calendar and my money's not going towards it and my effort and energy isn't going towards it, I don't have it.
Totally.
I don't have a good marriage if I don't have a good marriage on my calendar.
It's good.
And if I don't have money pouring into, it's just an investment, right? Where your money goes, that's where you're investing. And I don't have a clean house if my time isn't going towards that.
Totally.
Or my money or my calendar. Like, I just don't, if I haven't set up the system for it. And so often people are so surprised to find out that life is a math equation.
Yeah.
It's not a game of chance.
Yeah.
It's a math equation.
It's really good.
It's you put X amount in and you're going to pull X amount out. Once in a while, you get gifted something that you didn't put in. Once in a while, somebody will throw you a bone. God will drop down a mercy gift or something. 99% of the time, of the rest of the time, it's sowing and reaping.
It's really good.
Where did you sow? And that's what you're reaping. That's it.
It's really good.
So you have so much power and so much control over your life, how you talk, your culture, your core values, how your kids end up, all that stuff.
Which is exciting.
It
can feel really like, oh my gosh, this world is happening to me.
Yeah.
And in fact, you just got to take the reins, put some things on your calendar.
Yeah, it's true.
It's really good.
I just want to real quick, just for the end.
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to recap just really fast, like how to have conflict.
Yeah. How to do it well.
Yeah. How to do it well.
Yeah. Let's do it.
To me, there's some rules of conflict, some rules of engagement. The first one to me is to make sure that you start how you want to end. So I know we talked about that a little bit, but we're just highlighting it in this sequence, really right? So
take some notes now.
Yeah. So if I want the conflict to end well, I start it well. I start by going, gosh, I'm so thankful that you're in my life. Or I start it with, I'm really excited to feel connected to you. Or I feel a little bit nervous to have this conversation, but I know it's important for us. Like you have to start it with the end in mind. Start soft. So that's the key. And you can write all these down on a piece of paper, and you can even bring them in with you the next time you do a conflict.
Yeah.
A lot of couples do that, and it's responsible.
Wow.
It's responsible.
Yeah.
So start soft. The next one is there has to be a listener and there has to be a talker.
It's good.
So it's patience. It's slowing everything down. It's asking questions like, this is really number 3, but it's seek to understand. So you don't have any right arguing or rebutting if you don't actually fully understand.
Totally.
So do you understand what they're saying and why they're saying it? That's massive.
That compassion piece.
If I can't reflect back to you what you feel, why you feel that way, where it came from, I don't have any business going, well, nuh-uh.
Totally. Because
I'm not sure yet.
Right.
And so, that seek to understand, am I really seeking to understand? So that's part of the listening, right? I'm going to start soft. I'm going to be a listener in here. And I'm going to protect that as well. And then I'm going to really seek to understand, which I literally will say, hey, help me understand. I'm not saying help me understand. I'm saying like, help me understand.
Yeah.
Yesterday when you came in and you said, I don't feel like you do a good job caring for me. I don't know that I understand fully what you're saying.
Totally.
Gosh, that comment would outside of that, it would be so painful, right?
Right.
But if I say, help me understand, then you start to unpack that. You could say, oh, I was really emotionally charged. Or you could say like, I just don't really feel cared for in this area.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh man, well, what about last week when this happened and I did this? Did you feel cared for there? And you're like, kind of, but not really. And then I can start to, so you want to be more a scientist than you want to be a judge.
That's really good. Yeah.
So a judge is going right and wrong, looking for a verdict. Who's wrong? Who's right? The scientist doesn't care about right and wrong, except for to understand what do we need to tweak.
Yeah, that's really good.
So that's really helpful. Seek to understand. Reflective listening, we talked about it a little bit, but reflective listening can be really key inside of these conflicts because it lets the other person know that we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So reflective listening is simple. It's, let's say that we sat here for 5 minutes and you're sharing your heart with me about how when we were on the podcast, I started out by talking that you're my daughter-in-law and you felt really embarrassed by that. And you don't ever want to do that again. And I could paraphrase back to you and say like, oh, when we were on the podcast and I started out by talking about how you were my daughter-in-law, it made you feel really embarrassed. And you felt put on the spot. Is that what you're telling me? And you could go, oh no, I like that part. So in conflict, being on the same page again slows everything down.
Right.
And it gets us to a point where we both know that we're talking about the same thing.
Right.
It's pretty massive.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Game changer right there.
Yeah. It's a bummer to find out half an hour later that you're still not talking about the same thing. It's a waste of time. Yeah, it's true. And it really does happen.
Yeah, totally.
Feel free to set healthy boundaries. So I can no longer hear you. I can't do this conversation when there's accusation, when there is shame being thrown out, when there's manipulation.
Yeah.
When you're being condescending,
right?
Dishonor, really.
Right.
And so, but it doesn't mean I have to dishonor you because you dishonored me. So don't let my pain cause you pain. So here's what it looks like is we start the conversation and you say something like you start being accusatory. I would say something like, hey, I really want to hear you. I know that this is really painful for you. I actually just can't do you accusing me.
Yeah.
So if we need to take a little break for you to like gather your thoughts, I'm open to it. I'm so happy to do that.
Right.
But I can't do this because it makes me want to fight you.
Yeah.
That can be a complete game changer.
Yeah.
It keeps us in the game, right? So I'm holding I'm holding the standard. I'm not saying, hey, you're not allowed to do that. Right. Which is what a lot of people do, right? Is they go, oh, you're just whatever.
That's my boundary.
Yeah, that's my boundary. And now I'm beating you with my boundaries. Right. And we're both abusive. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but to not let my pain cause you pain. So those are some really helpful tips. Talk about yourself would be the last one, is share about what you're going through, not what you think the other person is doing. So don't tell me about me.
It feels like you are punishing me.
Yeah.
Versus you're punishing me.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
Tell me about where you're at. And people are like, well, what if they hurt you? You can say, man, I felt really hurt yesterday when you slapped me across the face. And it felt really disrespectful. I don't say, you're a disrespectful human being and you just feel like you can hit anyone. Right. Especially your father-in-law. Yeah. Yeah. So when I start interpreting your heart for you through your actions, I'm the judge now. I'm the judge and the jury. And that's never going to work. So
always the scientist.
Yeah, always the scientist. So do you have anything to add to that?
Oh my goodness. No, those are amazing.
Yeah.
Great tips. We need those rules for conflict. I will tell you. Game changers right there.
They're so helpful. And just practice. Practice
is real. Yeah. It doesn't feel as scary once you put your foot in the game a bit and figure out how to do conflict well. Yeah. I think for years I was very scared of conflict.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
It can be really scary.
Oh, my wife explaining to me her negative emotions about something I did is one of the most terrifying, painful
puts that pit
things.
In your stomach.
Oh,
You're just like,
I hate it.
Yeah.
It's the
horrible.
Worst.
But you know what it is? I think I've had to learn how to communicate this, but it's because I care so much. That's why. Because I'm so terrified that this thing is going to ruin our relationship or ruin you or hurt your heart.
Oh, and here goes our whole day. And I'm being misunderstood.
Right.
But now it's not that feeling is gone from me. It's that I know what's even worse.
Oh, yeah. It's disconnection. Painful.
Yeah. So now I'm like, we're going to solve this. I might as well do it now.
Totally.
I might as well stay in the game and hang in there. So yeah, just that disconnection that comes from me not wanting to hear her emotions or her not wanting to hear mine is just so incredibly painful. Right. And on the flip side is like, it's so awesome on the other side. Like the 10 minutes after you really genuinely resolve a conflict, awesome.
Right. You feel so connected.
So great.
Right.
Yeah. That some people fight just because of that.
Oh my gosh. I know a few.
Yeah, that's a bad plan. But yeah, so Al, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, and guys, hopefully We added a few tools to your toolbox here. Go and practice this week. Spend some time.
Yeah.
Getting some good tools in your toolbox. Press into a little bit more conflict and stay brave out there. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.